Welcome to Tar Heel Monsters, everybody. If you were directed here through a link on my other channel, Miss Lola's Hair and More, thank you so much for joining me. Now, honestly, you're not going to see me wearing gorgeous wigs and glamorous makeup because I am too busy researching some of the most riveting true crime cases that have been perpetrated in my Tar Heel state of North Carolina. This is the true story about two women, Shannon Crawley and Denita Smith, who want the same man. Mr. Bob, tell the story.
On January 4th, 2007, at approximately 8 in the morning, a maintenance employee for the Campus Crossings Apartments in Durham, North Carolina, was working near a building when he heard a gunshot. A woman ran from the back to the front of the 1100 building. He motioned for her to stop. She put her hands to her face and mumbled something. Then she rushed past him and half ran to a Burgundy Explorer and drove away. He followed her in his vehicle, then drove up beside her and rolled down his window. With her face still covered, she lowered her window halfway. He asked, "Ma'am, did you hear a gunshot or something?" She shook her head up and down, indicating yes. "Where did it come from?" The woman pointed her head in the direction behind her. "Why are you so nervous?" he asked. Never looking at him, she said loudly, "I'm afraid of guns." The maintenance worker took his cell phone from his pocket as he watched her speed away.
Where's your emergency?
At Campus Crossing Apartments. I'm hearing gunshots coming from somewhere around here. The lady that stays over here, she heard it too. She's like upset and shaking and stuff like that.
Police arrived at Campus Crossings in response to the maintenance employee's 911 call, but left without filing a report because they were unable to ascertain the source of the gunshot. 2 hours later, a Campus Crossings resident left his apartment for work and saw someone's belongings scattered down the staircase. He moved closer to the stairs and saw a woman's body splayed out at the bottom of the stairs. A pool of blood was puddled around her head, and she didn't appear to be breathing.
911, where's your emergency?
I think this girl just fell down the stairs. She's at the bottom of the stairs, head busted up and blood everywhere.
Okay, she responded to you at all?
She's not even moving. Do you want me to get her ID out?
Okay, if you can.
Now, her name is Denita Smith.
Okay.
Denita. Oh, she ain't moving, man.
25-year-old Denita Smith was a resident of the campus-based housing apartments. She had spent 6 years in college and was working towards her master's at North Carolina Central University. She was ambitious and had great plans for her future. An excellent student in journalism and photography, she had earned a fellowship with the New York Times. Her personal life was amazing too. 2 months prior, her fiancé, Jermeir Stroud, had asked her to marry him. Denita had happily accepted. Paramedics were first at the scene and determined that Denita Smith was already dead. Once police arrived, the maintenance employee gave investigators a description of the woman he saw earlier that morning. He described her as a black female, 5 feet 10, with a ponytail. She drove a Burgundy Explorer and was visibly upset about hearing the gunshot. He assumed she lived in the complex. Detective Sean Pate with the Durham Police Department didn't know what to make of Denita's injuries. What had caused the huge amount of blood that pooled around her head? Had she been in an altercation with someone and fallen down the steps, or had something more sinister taken place? He notified the college and Denita's family, only saying that she had been seriously injured from a fall down the steps of her apartment. Denita's mother nervously drove 3 hours from her residence in Charlotte, North Carolina, questioning how an accidental fall could escalate so quickly to an emergency situation. She prayed her daughter had just had a bad accident, but would be okay by the time she reached her. Having been told by Denita's mother that Denita had fallen and was seriously injured, Jermeir raced a closer 45 minutes from Greensboro to get to Denita. Upon his arrival at the scene, Jermeir received the incomprehensible news that Denita was dead. After providing investigators with information about their relationship, he spent the rest of the day with his and Denita's family. The day after the murder, Jermeir learned that police were looking for someone with a red SUV in connection with Denita's murder. Jermeir informed Durham police that he knew someone with a red Ford Explorer. Her name was Shannon Crawley. Himself a police officer with the Greensboro Police Department, Jermeir Stroud had met Shannon Crawley, a 911 dispatcher in the same department, 2 years prior to Denita's murder. Pate wanted to know if there was any reason this woman would want Denita dead. Jermeir admitted that he and Shannon had had a tempestuous affair. He had ended it a year before, but she wouldn't let go. She was relentless in pursuing him. She just wouldn't leave him alone and was still constantly phoning him and showing up where she knew he would likely be. She had gone as far as joining his church and moving into a house in his neighborhood. On January 5th, the day after Denita's murder, Detective Pate urgently wanted to talk to Shannon Crawley. He drove 55 miles to Greensboro where she worked. Pate interviewed Shannon extensively. He found her to be mild-mannered and polite. She answered his questions in a soft, unassuming voice. Shannon told the detective that she did not know Denita Smith and had only seen her once in church and another time in a picture at Jermeir's house. She did not like guns and had never owned one. She told him that on the previous day, January 4th, the morning of the murder, she was late to work because she took her child to a doctor's appointment. While investigator Pate was at the 911 center, a supervisor slipped him a note. A man who worked there wanted to speak with him about an urgent matter. The man was Shannon's coworker. He told Pate that Shannon had received several disturbing personal calls at work. She said Jermeir was harassing and stalking her, that she was afraid for her life because he carried a gun at all times. Concerned, the coworker had offered to sell her a gun for protection. Shannon had purchased the gun and bullets to go with it. It was a .38 revolver, the same caliber likely used to kill Denita. The next day, Detective Pate interviewed Jermeir again. Jermeir denied ever harassing Shannon at work and said there was no reason why she would be afraid of him. Pate asked him, "Do you think Shannon is capable of killing someone?" Without hesitating, Jermeir answered, "Yes." Jermeir truly believed that Shannon was dangerous. The vindictive acts that she accused him of doing to her were exactly what she had done to him. The investigation continued in Durham. Police showed Shannon Crawley's photo to the maintenance supervisor at Campus Crossing Apartments. He couldn't identify her as the woman he saw driving away from the crime scene on the morning of the murder, but was positive about the Ford Explorer. "Yeah, that's the vehicle I saw." He remembered that the woman had a patch on her shirt sleeve, like on a uniform. Shannon Crawley was a 911 dispatcher and wore a uniform with a patch on the sleeve. As investigators dug deeper into Shannon's account of her whereabouts, they learned that she had clocked in at work at about 10 a.m., some 2 hours after the murder, more than enough time for the 55-mile drive from Durham to her job at the 911 center in Greensboro. As Shannon's lies began to unravel, they elevated her to the prime suspect in Denita Smith's murder. Obviously, she hadn't considered cell tower records when she told police that she had never been to Durham and didn't know where Denita lived. The day before Denita's murder, Shannon's phone had pinged off a tower less than 100 feet from where Denita would be found dead the next morning. Shannon most likely went to Campus Crossing's apartments the day before the murder on a trial run, to see where Denita lived and to observe her movements so that after the murder, she could quickly escape the complex. Police also checked Jermeir Stroud's cell phone and police radio. He was nowhere near Durham the day before or the day of the murder, only Shannon. Further trouble for Shannon was her rock-solid alibi. She told her supervisor and detectives that she was at the doctor's office with her child at the time of Denita's murder. The pediatrician told police that Shannon never showed for the appointment that day. Although there were problems with the case, such as no DNA, no fingerprints, no murder weapon, and no forensics at the crime scene that linked Shannon Crawley to the murder, police had an abundance of evidence in their favor. Pate decided that they had more than enough to effect an arrest. He obtained a search warrant for Shannon's house and impounded her Explorer to test for gunshot residue. During the search of Shannon's house, a Greensboro Communication Center 911 shirt was found with a patch on the sleeve exactly how the maintenance supervisor had described it. Results from the gunshot residue test on the Explorer was positive.
Woman accused of murdering a North Carolina Central grad student will be in court today. Police believe Shannon Crawley shot and killed Denita Smith in January. Today, she faces a bond hearing. WRAL's Dan Bowens is live in Durham with a preview. Dan.
Good morning, Valanda. Shannon Crawley has been held without bond since her arrest in January. Today, she'll find out if that will change, and we may get a closer look at the state of her mental condition. Police believe Shannon Crawley killed Denita Smith. They think Crawley shot the 25-year-old in the back of her head outside her apartment in Durham back in January. Smith's body was found at the bottom of a stairwell.
Our family circle has been broken.
Denita Smith was a graduate student at North Carolina Central University. Friends have no trouble remembering the good things about her.
I never knew a time when Denita was not eager and enthusiastic about what she was doing.
Investigators believe Shannon Crawley planned the killing. Crawley is a former Guilford County 911 dispatcher. Though police have not said much about a motive, court documents say Crawley lived blocks from Smith's fiancée. He is a Greensboro police officer and has told investigators the suspect was stalking him.
Because murder breeds confusion. And trying to make sense of it, even if you find out the most intimate details, leads you into a deep river of despair.
And we're told that Crawley was staying at the women's prison in Raleigh for what's described as safekeeping for a period of time during the last few months. Prosecutors say they will not seek the death penalty in this case. Back to you, Blaine.
Dan Bowens reporting in Durham. Thank you.
One thing still puzzled Pate: the motive for Denita Smith's murder. He thought back to his interview with Shannon when she revealed to him that she had become pregnant with Jermeir's baby. Her account of how she and Jermeir handled the abortion was enlightening. She had said to him, "I'm pregnant. What are we going to do?" Jermeir's reply was scorching, "I don't want to have a baby with you." It was memorable to Pate because of the way Shannon had emphasized, "you." The implication seemed to be, if Jermeir was to have a child with someone, it wouldn't be with her. Shannon had an abortion and probably never got over the obvious insult. It must have torn out a part of her soul and further fueled her maniacal plan for murder. Shannon's family wholeheartedly believed in her innocence. They were convinced that Jermeir Stroud was the one doing the harassing, stalking, and threatening Shannon because she ended the relationship with him. In April 2007, after languishing in the women's prison in Raleigh for 4 months, telling anyone who would listen that she was innocent, Shannon was released on a $175,000 bond. The following month, Shannon walked into the Durham Police Department with her lawyer, prepared to tell law enforcement a new story about who really killed Denita Smith. In her mind, it was a story that refuted all the evidence and proved her innocence. She started by explaining to Detective Pate and Assistant District Attorney David Sachs that her phone had pinged off a cell tower near Denita Smith's apartment the morning before her murder because Jermeir had come to her house and coerced her into going to Durham with him to spy on Denita and to monitor her movements. Shannon addressed Detective Pate. "Remember, I told you before that you should look at Jermeir. He murdered Denita, not me." Pate looked at her with a raised eyebrow. From all accounts, Jermeir and Denita were a loving couple, so why would he want to kill her? Unperturbed, Shannon continued, "Appearances can be deceiving. He wanted me to go back with him. After I told him no, he became furious and has been threatening and stalking me ever since." ADA Sachs interrupted. "We're open to hearing any new evidence, but it must come with credible proof." Pate wanted to know, "If you had a story to prove your innocence, why didn't you tell me when I first interviewed you? Why have you consistently lied to me?" Shannon's voice broke, as if the answer was too heart-wrenching to utter. "I was afraid of what Jermeir would do if he found out I told you he killed Denita. He has a horrible temper and carries a gun. I feared for my life and the lives of my children." The detective and assistant DA listened patiently. She started by telling why her phone had pinged off a cell tower near Denita Smith's apartment the morning before her murder. She told them that Jermeir had come to her house and coerced her into going to Durham with him. She was baffled to see him drive into Campus Crossing apartment complex. She asked what was going on. He ignored her and drove slowly past Building 1100 a few times. He drove her back to Greenville without saying a word. The next morning, He came back to her house with a terrible temper and at gunpoint forced her into her Explorer and made her drive back to Campus Crossing. She obeyed him because he had threatened to harm her children if she didn't. When they arrived at the complex, he got out of the car and told her to stay there. Curious, she got out and began walking to the breezeway where he had entered. She heard arguing and then a gunshot. Seconds later, Jermeir came from the breezeway, demanding that she get back in the car. He opened the driver's door, then slid across her to the back seat. He crouched down, pointed a gun at her head, then demanded that she drive. She was exiting the complex when a maintenance man stopped her. He couldn't see Jermeir, and she was too afraid to alert him. Pate continued listening to her incredulous story with a neutral expression. She was attempting to give him an explanation for every bit of evidence they had accumulated against her. The scenario of Jermeir doing acrobatics to get into the back seat would explain how gunshot residue was found on the steering wheel of her vehicle. At the end of the interview with Shannon and her lawyer, ADA Sachs told them that the new story didn't sway the state's decision. She was still charged with the murder of Denita Smith. Shannon insisted that she was innocent and that Jermeir was the real killer. She had undeniable proof of his guilt. Recordings of him admitting he killed Denita. Obviously skeptical, but willing to listen to the recordings, Sachs said he would allow her the opportunity to change his mind if the evidence was credible. Shannon produced the tapes to his office within hours.
I spent 4 months in jail because of you, because you lied.
I told you all you had to do was shut the up, man.
Jermeir, just tell the truth, please. Don't do this to me.
You know I already got away with murder once. Think I can't do it again?
I'm sure you can. Someone like you, I'm sure.
Trying to keep my ass out of jail.
And what about me? I didn't do anything here.
Better you than me. And you try to put a cop in jail.
You know God is all-seeing and all-knowing. Remember that. How many times did I pray with you?
Every day.
You remember that?
Shannon.
Yes.
Sorry.
Bye.
After listening to the tapes, Sachs and Pate concurred that there was no way the voice on the recording sounded like Jermeir. They had heard Jermeir's deep, raspy voice. The voice in the recordings was almost Mickey Mouse-like, Sachs had remarked. The tapes had not helped Shannon prove her innocence. Her family, on the other hand, especially her mother, was adamant that the voice on the tapes was Jermeir. She had overheard 99% of calls and was positive that the voice was Jermeir admitting to killing Denita and framing her daughter. On June 8, 2010, Shannon's mother was jolted awake at 5:30 in the morning. Her daughter was crawling over to her bedside, crying hysterically. Shortly thereafter, a frantic call came into the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. It was Shannon Crawley. She had been violently raped by Jermeir Stroud. Allegedly, he came to Charlotte and raped her at 3:30 in the morning while she was walking her dog. He cut her clothes off with a knife, cut her thigh, and penetrated her vagina with a knife. He had ejaculated. A detective in the sexual assault unit of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department stated that based on the alleged time of the rape and Jermeir Stroud's cell phone records, he would have had to travel from Charlotte to Greensboro at approximately 120 miles per hour without stopping for red lights to have committed the rape. A rape kit was analyzed. The results were negative for semen. There were superficial lacerations to Shannon's neck and thigh, as well as minor abrasions to the outer labia. There was no indication that she had been penetrated by a knife. A nurse and a physician's assistant said there were no serious injuries to the vaginal canal, despite Shannon's insistence that she needed stitches. The story was just too preposterous, but it was the obligation of the police department to follow her story and to investigate it fully. On or about June 23, 2008, Jermeir had put trash in his trash can for the first time since the alleged rape and saw at the bottom of his otherwise empty trash can a knife. He called the Greensboro Police Department and reported the incident. One of his neighbors came forward and told the detective that he heard a thump around June 19th and saw a vehicle drive away from Jermeir's trash can. Another neighbor told police that on June 19th, she saw someone throw something into his trash can and drive off. Shannon had been the person to suggest to a detective that law enforcement should search Jermeir's trash can at his residence to look for the knife. The state was convinced that Denita's murder was the result of a love triangle where Shannon was bent on having Jermeir all to herself. In her mind, the only way to make that happen was to kill Denita. When Jermeir didn't reciprocate her affections after the murder, she connivingly schemed to try and frame Jermeir for the murder. Shannon Crawley's jury trial began on February 8, 2010, in Durham County Superior Court with the Honorable Judge Ronald Stevens presiding. Her defense lawyer did not present the audio tapes as evidence. The prosecution did. Shannon testified in her own defense with the same soft voice she used when Detective Pate first interviewed her. He wasn't fooled by her fragile demeanor and deadly intent. Neither were the 12 jurors of her peers who deliberated about 7 hours over 2 days. They did not believe Shannon's story and found her guilty of first-degree murder. Judge Stevens sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As of June 2025, 46-year-old Shannon Crawley has been incarcerated for 15 years. Her current location is Anson Correctional Institution, a close custody prison located in Polkton, North Carolina. She still insists that she's innocent and that Jermeir has gotten away with murder. For the record, Jermeir was never charged and was totally cleared of suspicion in Denita's death. However, many blame him for creating a love triangle that ended in the brutal murder of an innocent victim. Denita Smith was gunned down never knowing the man she loved and trusted had betrayed her by bringing a vicious monster into their lives, one who snuffed out her brilliant future forever.